Alright, I know you are probably itching to dive into some code by now with there's a little more theory we need to cover with deep learning. I want to talk a little bit about exactly how they are trained and some tips for tuning them. You have had a little bit of hands-on experience with them using the TensorFlow playground. So how do you train a multi-layer perceptron? Well, it's usually a technique called backpropagation. It's not that complicated really at a conceptual level. All we are doing is gradient descent like we talked about before, using that mathematical trick of research mode autodiff to make it happen efficiently for each training step. We just compute the output error for the weights that we have currently in place for each connection between each artificial neuron. And then this is where the back propagation happens. Since there is multiple layer to deal with, we have to take that error that is computed at the end of our neural network and back propagate it down in the other direction, push it back through the neural network backwards. Okay, in that way we can distribute that error back through each connection all the way back to the inputs using the weights at we are currently using at this training step. So pretty simple concept. We just take the error, we use the weight that we are currently using in our neural network to back propagate that error to individual connections, and then we can use that information to tweak the weights through gradient descent to actually try and arrive at a better value on the next pass at the next epoch, if you will, of our training passes. So that's all back propagation is. We run a set of weights, we measure the error, we back propagate the error using that weights, tune things using gradient descent and try again, and we just keep doing this over and over again until your system converges. We should talk a little bit about activation functions. So in our previous exercises using the TensorFlow playground, we are using the hyperbolic tangent activation function by default, and then we switched to something called ReLU, and we saw that the results were a little bit better. Well, the activation function is just the function that determines the output of a neuron given the sum of its inputs. So you take the sum of all the weights of the inputs coming into neuron. The activation function is what takes that sum and turn it into an output signal. Now, like we talked about way back in lecture 1, using a step function is what people did originally, but that does not really work with gradient descent because there is no gradient line. It's a step function. This is it's either on or off. It's either straight across or up and down. There is no useful derivative there at all. So that's why alternative functions work a little bit better in practice. There are some other ones called the logistic function, the hyperbolic tangent function, that produces more of a curvy. If you think about what a hyperbolic tangent looks like, it's more of it does not have that sharp cut off there at 0 at the origin. So that can work out pretty well. There is also something called the exponential linear unit, which is also a bit more curvy. What we ended up using through was ReLU, that stands for rectified linear unit, and graph here is showing basically it's 0 if it is less than 0, and if it is greater than 0 it climbs up at a 45 degree. And so it's just giving you the actual sum of input weights as its output. If that output is greater than 0, so the advantage that ReLU has is that it's very simple, very easy and very fast to compute. So if you are worried about converging quickly and you are computed resources, ReLU is a really good choice. Now there are variants of ReLU that work even better if you don't care so much about efficiency. One is called leaky ReLU, and all that is, instead of being that left of 0, it actually has a little bit of a slope there as well, a very small slope, and again that's for mathematical purposes. to have an actual meaningful derivative there to work with, so that we can provide even better convergence. It's also something called a noisy ReLU, which can also help with convergence. But these days ELU, the exponential linear unit, will often produce faster learning. That kind of it's gaining popularity now that computing resources are becoming less and less of a concern, now that you can actually do deep learning over a cluster of PCs or network in the cloud. So that's what activation functions are all about. You can also choose different optimization function. We are talked in very general terms about gradient descent, but there are various variations of gradient descents that you can use as well. We talked a little bit earlier about momentum optimization. Basically the idea there is to speed things up as you are going down a hill and slow things start to approach that minima. So it's a way of just making the gradient descent happen faster by kind of skipping over those steeper parts of your learning curve. Wow, I never used the word learning curve in the context where it actually means something mathematically meaningful, but anyway, there is also something called the Nesterov accelerated gradient, which is just a tweak on top of momentum optimization. Basically it's looking ahead a little bit to the gradient in front of you to take that into account, so that works even better. There is also something called RMS prop, which is just using an adaptive learning rate that again helps point you in the right direction toward the minimum. Remember back to how gradient descent works. It's not always obvious which direction you are going to be heading in a given the change in parameters. So RMS prop is just a more sophisticated way of trying to figure out the right direction. Finally, there is something called ADAM, stand for adaptive moment estimation. Basically it's the momentum optimizer and RMS prop combined, and it gives you the best of both worlds. And that's popular choice today because it works really well and it's very easy to use. Again, the libraries you have got a use for this stuff are very high level and very not like you are gonna have to implement Nesterov accelerated gradient from scratch. You are gonna say optimizer equal ADAM and be done with it. It's just a matter of choosing the one that makes sense for what you are trying to do. Make your own trade-off between speed of convergence and computational resources and time required to actually do that convergence. Let's talk about overfitting as well. You can see you often end up with patterns like this where you are not really getting a clean solution. You are gonna end up with these weird spikes sometimes, and sometimes if you let things go a little bit too long, it ends up reinforcing those spikes. Those overfitted areas where you are not really fitting to the pattern you are looking for, you are just fitting to the training data that you are giving. So there are ways to combat that, and obviously if you have thousands of weights to tune, those connections between each neuron and each layer of your neurons can add up really quickly. So it's very easy for overfitting to happen. There are ways to deal with it. One is called early stopping. So as soon as you performing start to drop, that might be nurtured way of telling you that it might be time for you to stop learning. At this point maybe you are just overfitting. There are also regularization terms you can add to the post function during training. That can basically, like the bias term that we talked about earlier, like can help too. But a surprisingly effective technique is called dropout, and it kind of is an example of a very simple idea that is very effective. The idea is just to ignore say half of the neurons randomly at each trained step, pretend that they don't exist at all. And the reason this works is because it forces your model to spread out its learning. It's basically you are taking away half of its brain, if you will, at each training step. You are going to force the remaining half of those neurons to do as much work as possible. So this prevents things where you have individual neurons taking on more of the work than they should. You even saw some of the examples that we ran in the TensorFlow playground, that sometimes we have ended up with neurons that were likely, and by using dropout that would have forced that neuron to have been used more effectively. So very simple concept and very effective in making sure that you are making full use of your neural network. Let's talk about tuning your typology. Another way to improve the results of your deep learning network is to just play games with how many neurons you have and how many layers of neurons you have. One way of dealing with it's just trial and error. It's kind of what we did in TensorFlow playground, but there can be a methodology to that, and even you can start off by it with the strategy of evaluating a smaller network with less neurons in the hidden layers, or you can evaluate a large network with some layer. So basically you want to see, can I get away with a smaller network and still get good results, and you keep on making it smaller and smaller until you find the smallest it can be safely, or you can try to make your network larger and larger and see at what point it stops providing more benefits to you. So just start sizing things differently and see what works and what does not. Again, there is a sort of a spooky aspect to how this stuff all works together. It's very hard to understand intuitively what's going on inside of a neural network, a deep learning network in particular. So sometimes you just have to use your intuition to try to tune the thing and get at the right number of resources you need. Also, again, in today's modern computing environment, sometimes you don't really care so much. It's probably okay to have a deep neural network that has more neurons that it really needs, right? I mean, what's the real expense involved in that? Probably not much. I will say that more layers will often yield faster learning than having more neurons and less layers. So if you care about the speed of convergence, adding more layers is often the right thing to do. Or you can also use something called a models juice. There are actually libraries out there of neural network approaches for specific problems. So if you don't think you are the first person in the world of solve a specific classification problem, or anything else you try to apply a deep neural network to, maybe you should check out Juice out there to see if someone's already figured out the optimal typology for their previous problem. Achieve instead of trying to reinvent the model. People share these things for a reason, and it can save you lot of time. So that's another theory. That's enough talk. In our next lecture, we'll get our hands dirty with TensorFlow and start writing some real Python code to implement our own neural network. Thank you for watching.